We start with Emmanuel Acho. Emmanuel Acho says people who say that the Niners are going to be bad or expect the Niners to be bad as soon as they have to start paying Brock Purdy big dollars, well, maybe they haven't thought it through. Here's Emmanuel Acho.
The myth that the Niners are going to be without talent once Brock Purdy gets paid.
Because he still do got it.
Like, for those that don't realize, Talanoa Hufanga was a 5th-round pick, All-Pro. Fred Warner, a 3rd-round pick, future Hall of Famer. George Kittle was a 5th-round pick, All-Pro. The Niners know how to draft, particularly late in the draft. So to say that the Niners will be without talent once Brock Purdy gets paid is ignorant, it's uneducated, it's uninformed, and it has a lack of research as it pertains to the San Francisco 49ers. Not only will they have talent even when Brock Purdy gets paid, Kyle Shanahan is the machine. Y'all realize Jordan Mason, Christian McCaffrey's backup running back, undrafted Jordan Mason, is on pace for 2,100 yards? No, he won't get there. But if he started all season, he'd probably get to 1,600. So it's not even like the Niners need all of these stars. They went to the Super Bowl without Christian McCaffrey, with Matt Breida, Jeff Wilson, and Raheem Mostert.
All right. Well, what do you think, Dieter? I mean, he's kind of pushing back on that commonly held wisdom that the Niners are somehow in this last dance mode. Yeah. I've kind of pushed back on the last dance mode just simply because it's not the last dance. They haven't won anything. So you can't compare yourself to the Bulls who won 6 when you've won nothing. Okay.
Well, they had won 5 to that point. So yeah, the last dance was number 6. I
mean, come on, you can't.
Yeah, a little bit different.
That right there is not a good comparison. But then there's also I also kind of push back on the notion that the Niners are cooked once they pay Purdy, because I don't believe that's the case. I think the 49ers have done they've been kind of the opposite of the way most teams are. Most teams hit on their 1st and 2nd round pick, and then they blow all their day 3 picks. The Niners have been the opposite. The Niners have been hitting on day 3 and hitting after the draft. But they're not hitting on day 1. In fact, they've swung and missed almost more than almost any team in pro football on day 1. So I just kind of look at it as long as they draft better in day 1 and day 2, they'll be able to withstand the fact that they're paying Brock Purdy big money. How do you see the Brock Purdy era when he starts getting paid?
Well, you're right. They're going to have to draft better. And I think that the way I structured that sentence tells you what I really think. They'll have to draft better. To this point, they have not built up an infrastructure that can sustain serious injury, much less serious year-over-year losses, and the depreciation of the assets that they already have. Not to put it in very cold terms, but it's just a fact of the matter. We're seeing right now the issues that this team has with depth. You look at the defensive line against Minnesota. I mean, Leonard Floyd was a joke. You're bringing in Yetur Gross-Matos, who's fine. After that, you got Robert Beal. Drake Jackson doesn't have a job anymore, right? You think about the offensive line and where they're at. They had to pay Trent Williams whatever he wanted, and he deserved it. Don't get me wrong. But you got Aaron Banks next to him. Banks was not awesome against Minnesota, but he's a solid enough player. But now he's about to price himself out of town. You have Jake Brendel, whose days as the starting center for this team are numbered, but he's cheap. Pooney was really good in game 1. He was really bad in game 2. Get this. He's a rookie. It's going to be up and down. That's how it goes. And teams are going to attack him after all that hype he got, deservedly so, after game 1. And you got Colton McKivitz at right tackle. Who are the backups here, Larry? Like, who are the guys in waiting? You have a wide receiver in waiting, maybe 2, in Cowing and Pearsall, but we haven't seen anything to give you the indication that that's actually going to hit. You have a running back in waiting in Isaac Arendo. He has 1 carry on the season. Defensive line, you got nothing. Middle linebacker, you got nothing. You had to bring in Devondre Campbell because you didn't trust D. Winters. Now, maybe that changes as the season progresses. You feel pretty good about the secondary, but if Charvarius Ward and Diamador Lenore leave, well, now you're really leaning on young guys in the secondary. Now you're really leaning on a guy like Renardo Green. Now you're really leaning on a guy like Darrell Luter. And maybe one of those 2 will hit. I'm very high on Green. And one of the areas that they are young in right now, and you can say, oh, they've drafted so well, safety is a hot mess. If we've learned anything from the first 2 games of the San Francisco 49ers, is that their safety play has been beyond suboptimal, and that Jair Brown is getting attacked again and again and again. And I love Jair Brown's talent, and I love the head that's on his shoulders. But ultimately, until he stops somebody from picking on him, he's going to get picked on. And safeties our destiny in the NFL. And right now, the 49ers' destiny isn't looking so hot. And I'm not trying to overreact to one game. That was a tough schematic matchup. They didn't execute on 3rd and 4th down. Stuff's going to happen. You're going to lose games in the NFL. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. But the idea that this team has just some abundant well of talent coming through the system, and that a lot of these veterans who are outstanding, who do make the 49ers that we talk about as Super Bowl contenders, the fact that anyone thinks that there's, guys coming in behind them to take it, like, that's just not the case across the board. And even in the places that it is apparent, the drop-off is going to be significant. I think you need to continue to draft well. You need to hit. A lot of these rookies we're giving the benefit of the doubt to because they haven't played enough football yet to really say that they stink or are good. And honestly, I think the 49ers have been one of the worst drafting teams in recent years, outside of, a couple of basically flyer hits, a couple times winning the lottery. And by the way, every team has those successes. They have been paying for trading Trey Lance. Not that they should have kept him, but the trade for Trey Lance, they've been paying the price on that. The trade for Christian McCaffrey, they've loved the returns, but they would have also liked to have used the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round picks that they traded for Christian McCaffrey. They went all the way in. They pushed all their chips in, and they didn't do enough on the periphery to 2, 3, 4x their investment on low draft picks to say that you have this sort of deep roster, because the roster isn't currently deep. And ultimately, I don't think that you're going to be in a spot next year to where you can make up the deficiencies that currently exist. But that's my take. And ultimately, it's not up to, they have to play football. And there will be guys that we miss on, and there will be guys that we're right on, and we'll find out.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at their depth chart and just look at where these guys, they did hit, Jawan Jennings, 7th round.
Great pick.
Colton McKivitz, 5th round. George Kittle, 5th round. Brock Purdy,
George
7th round.
5th rounder in what? 2017.
17 Kittle, 5th round.
Yeah. But no one's arguing that. But when you've had now 7, 8 bites at the apple, and you get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks every day 3, you better hit on some of them. Now, to be fair, a hit isn't a very high bar, right? You just have to get somebody who can be on a roster for 3 or 4 years, right? Get to that second contract. In these cases, you're getting all pro players with a Fred Warner and George Kittle. I just also think that this idea that other teams don't do this is somewhat foolhardy. Other teams have successes in late rounds. Half the NFL is undrafted free agent guys, it seems like. So the idea that the Niners are the only team that has success on day 3 is kind of ludicrous. They've probably had more top-end success, but then there's also Ronnie Bell, and you don't hold Ronnie Bell against him because he was a late-round pick, but he's still on the damn roster, which shows you how shallow the talent pool is in some places. So, well,
I look at them and I just did a quick count as you were talking there.
Yeah.
The Niners have somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 or 17 day 3 picks.
Yeah.
On their roster. Just a quick rundown. Jawan Jennings, Colton McKivitz, George Kittle, Brock Purdy. Those are your starters on offense. But then you also have, other day 3 picks on this roster: Garendo, Nick Zakelj, Spencer Burford, Jalen Moore, Jacob Cowing, Ronnie Bell.
Yep.
Those are all on the offensive side. On the defensive side, there's not a lot, but Robert Beal, 5th round, Givens, undrafted, D. Winters, round 6, Tatum Bethune, 7th round, Malik Mustafa, 4th round, Darrell Luter Jr., 5th round, Demo, 5th round, Afanga, 5th round. And then, of course, Mitch Wishnowsky in the 4th round. So, the Niners do have a great track record of day 3. But if they're going to really, climb the top of the mountain, they have to put together a couple years in a row of they hit on their 1st and 2nd and 3rd round draft choices. And they have not been able to do that during this regime. And that, to me, has left them just a little bit on the outside looking in as far as talent goes. And I think if you ask me, why have they not gotten it done? I would say that. I would say that they wasted too many of their day 1 and day 2 picks on bad selections or bad trades. And they have not been able, even though they've been awesome on day 3 and really awesome after the draft, but you can't miss on as many day 1, day 2, day 3 picks. I mean, look, think about it. Dante Pettis, bust. Jalen Hurd, bust. Not to mention McGlinchey.
Go through
and
every
the
round
3 picks for Lance and the
I mean,
we could just
round
go
3 pick they've ever had, save for Fred Warner,
Trey Sermon, and I mean they've wasted a ton, of first, second, and third round draft choices, and it's to this point I would say that is the main reason they've fallen short. But it's also, in a way, it's hard to hit on day 3 of the draft, so they're doing that. If they can just hit on day 1 and day 2. I think they'll be able to withstand the fact that they're going to have to pay Purdy more, and they're going to have to go with some younger players, because I think they can find those guys on day 3 and after the draft. But
it's also just
missing.
It's a fundamentally flawed premise. There's no alternative. Right? It is what it is, and we'll find out in due time. But you have to pay Purdy. I don't care what people think about Brock Purdy. The cost of competence, as we've seen with Dak Prescott. And we've seen with Kirk Cousins, the cost of competence is exorbitant. And the real cost is not having competence back there. And you can say, oh, well, Kyle Shanahan will always figure it out. No, he won't, right? If you get a Jimmy Garoppolo who's a fringe NFL starter, he'll figure it out. But he couldn't figure it out with Brian Hoyer, who had aged out. He couldn't figure it out with C.J. Beathard. He couldn't figure it out with Nick Mullins. There are a lot of quarterbacks that Kyle Shanahan has worked with who don't automatically just look like Brock Purdy. We talk about a system quarterback. Yes, Brock Purdy is a beneficiary of the 49ers system, but that's not to say that Brock Purdy is some scrub and that anybody can do it. Clearly, they cannot. And you just have to pay him. There's no alternative. It's just
there's no question. Yeah, they're going to have to pay him. Do they have to pay him record-setting money? I don't know, but they're going to pay him a ton, and it is going to alter their cap quite a bit.